The soldiers called it a clean operation. They burned the house, the family, and the evidence. But they missed one thing. They didn't count on the boy. They didn't count on the fact that hate, when it's deep enough, can hold a soul to this world long after the body is ash. When the first soldier disappeared, they laughed. By the time they realized the forest was becoming a graveyard, it was already too late. He wasn't killing them, he was dismantling them. And he had one goal: find his sister. The night the hunters became the prey. The snow outside the farmhouse was meant to be a shroud, but it became a stage for a massacre. The soldiers, ragged and starving, arrived like wolves in the guise of men. Aaron, trusting in the ancient code of hospitality, opened his door. His family, mother, father, and his beloved frail grandmother, offered warmth, bread, and wine. But the warmth of the hearth only fed the soldiers' inner rot. When their commander, a man named Richter whose eyes were as flat and dead as river stones, locked his gaze on Aaron's sister Angelica, the air in the room curdled. The hospitality was repaid with blood. They looted the home, butchered the parents, and struck down the grandmother, the woman who had raised Aaron with stories of saints and spirits. Aaron charged, a desperate boy against hardened killers, but they pinned him to the floor, doused the home in kerosene, and struck the match. The house roared into an inferno. Aaron burned, his skin blistering and blackening, his lungs filling with the smoke of his own demise. But in that final, agonizing moment, he made a pact with the only thing that would listen: his own absolute, consuming hatred. The Woods of Whispers. Days later, the soldiers set up a camp in the black, frozen forest. Richter, the man who wore humanity like a stolen coat, felt it first. The air grew heavy, smelling not of pine but of sulfur and ash. He heard it then, a soft, melodic humming. It sounded like Angelica. Richter wandered into the dense thicket, drawn by the voice. He pushed through the gnarls of dead trees, his rifle shaking in his grip. "Angelica?" he whispered, his own breath hitching. The voice stopped. From behind a skeletal oak, a figure stepped into the moonlight. It was Aaron. But it was not the boy who had begged for mercy. It was a ruin of a human, a towering, calcified effigy of agony. His skin was little more than flaking, charred charcoal, revealing the raw, glistening meat beneath. His face had been carved away by the fire, leaving a mask of exposed bone and hanging, singed muscle. Richter didn't scream. The sound died in his throat. Aaron didn't move. He simply existed in that space, an anchor of pure, hellish rage. As Aaron reached out, his fingers, stubs of bone and blackened flesh, seemed to warp the very air. He didn't just kill Richter. He dismantled his sense of reality. The terror was so absolute it stopped Richter's heart long before the phantom hands could tear the skin from his face to match the horror of his own. The systematic harvest. The other soldiers found Richter's remains the next morning. They were not just dead, they were arranged as warnings. Aaron, now a spirit bound to the earth by an unbreakable tether of vengeance, began his harvest. He was not a man anymore. He was the shadow that moved between the trees, the creak of the floorboard, the breath against the ear. One soldier, patrolling the perimeter, found himself walking into a loop. Every path he took led him back to the same pile of cold, white ash. He began to weep, pleading for forgiveness, but the silence answered. When the soldiers finally found him, he was suspended in the canopy, his body twisted into a shape no bone should be able to hold, his eyes wide and frozen in an eternal stare of realization. The man who had struck the match was the hardest to break. Aaron made him hear the crackle of the burning house for 3 nights straight. He heard his own footsteps running through the house, the screams of his parents, all mimicked perfectly by the wind. On the 4th night, Aaron manifested inside their tent. The others watched in paralyzed horror as their comrade was pulled, not upward but into the shadows, his legs crushed by the weight of an unseen pressure, his frantic scratching leaving trenches in the frozen dirt until he was dragged into the abyss. The saving of Angelica. Aaron found Angelica in the back of the transport truck, terrified and shivering, huddled in the dark. The soldiers who were left had forgotten the war. They were obsessed only with the Ash Man who haunted their every step. When Aaron approached the truck, the light didn't reflect off his ruined face. It seemed to be sucked into it. He touched the chains binding his sister, and the rusted iron shattered like glass. He didn't speak, he couldn't. He only looked at her, and for a fleeting, beautiful second, the fire in his eyes died down, replaced by the soft, human warmth of the brother who had loved her. He stepped out into the night, blocking the path of the final remaining soldiers. They fired their weapons, but the bullets passed through him, kicking up dirt behind him. He walked forward, his presence so heavy that the very atmosphere began to burn. The forest began to ignite, not with fire but with a spectral, hellish glow. He dragged them all, the men who had destroyed his world, into the center of the blaze. There was no mercy, only the cold, hard justice of a soul who had refused to die until the debt was paid in full. When the sun finally rose, the forest was silent. The soldiers were gone, the truck was empty, and the house of cards they had built was blown away. Angelica was found near the edge of the woods, alive, watching as the embers of her family's home finally flickered out, leaving nothing behind but the scent of snow and the memory of a brother who had become a demon to keep her safe. The forest was silent. The screams had long faded, replaced by a hollow, ringing quiet that settled into the marrow of Angelica's bones. She stood at the edge, her boots sinking into mud churned by the frantic, doomed retreat of soldiers who had vanished into the mist. They were gone, dismantled by a grief so absolute it had defied the laws of nature. Angelica looked at her hands. They were trembling by the weight of the order she had given, the command that had sparked this bonfire of souls.